Astro Bot took the gaming world by storm from its original state of play trailer. Soon after, early review copies resulted in glowing response. Claims of Game of the Year and Perfect 10 all around. Once the general public got their hands on the game, the sentiment was shared. A heralding of the PlayStation 5 finally having a game was called. With the final speedrunning DLC launched, there is now no worse a time than to say my thoughts on the game. I think it's completely mid. Astro Bot is a completely competent 3D platformer, far better than many that have unsuccessfully tried out the formula. There is a charm to how well the environments pop, and the enemy design can be quite clever. But all of this was also true for Astro's Playroom, and I think that game was better. Astro Bot feels spread more thin. For as much as I heard people claim this game reminded them of Mario, the only time I felt reminded of the Nintendo plumber was when I unlocked the super hard secret final bot. That felt like Mario, with it throwing the hardest challenge it possibly can as a thank you for playing, while still coming across as a genuine thank you by being incredibly fun. The rest of the game though I mostly felt like I was sleepwalking, barring a few exciting levels such as the slow-motion casino. As for the enemy design, it starts good but then rarely does anything to vary after that. Technically this is a failing of most 3D platformers, but it feels more obvious in Astro Bot. Too many enemies look exactly the same except for a palette swap, taking me right back to the days of the also disappointing Ni no Kuni 2 Revenant Kingdom. The level gimmicks were fine, completely competent, and yet all these weeks later I really can't point one out as a favorite. I suppose I liked sucking up liquids and using them as platforms. That felt the most unique to me, and even became horrifying when I was forced to use the ability to kill bird fetuses. I also will say I loved one mechanic, which is the little bird who only shows up in levels you've already beaten but skipped a collectible. Pay the coins and the little guy will beep in the direction of a missed puzzle piece or bot, which is so incredibly useful. I wonder why Sony bothered to also allow players to share video hints. They honestly aren't needed, as the bird will help you find every collectible barring Blink and you'll miss it once during the playable intro to a level. Something I couldn't stand were the controller gimmicks. The speaker wasn't bad, where the actual sound effects only come from your controller and will sound completely natural to what Astro is doing. However, moving the controller itself to control your ship and other motion controls feel like a step back from the Wii. People forget that the shape of the Wii remote was the real reason those felt as good as they did. A hunk of plastic in both hands is instead easier to be off kilter, and many times I found they just didn't respond to me thanks to preferring to sit at an angle. Blame my eyesight, sitting head onto a TV doesn't work well with me. I also think forcing players to blow into the controller is and always was stupid, even back on the DS. Thankfully for me, I turned these off before even starting, as it's a setting in your console itself. Not in the game, sadly, so happy hunting through the PS5 settings. As for how Astro Bot is a love letter to PlayStation history, there are parts I like and parts I don't. It's hard not to like seeing Spyro and Kyotaro in the same game, and even characters I'm not familiar with or don't recognize feel like love was given to them. There's nothing hollow in these cameos, despite how hollow of a concept that is. That said, I am hoping that the obvious omissions of Twisted Metal and Square Enix are rectified in a future free DLC. Square I understand, as they probably asked for too much money or just outright refused, but why the hell does a first-party IP like Twisted Metal get ignored, especially as there is a hit series on Peacock? A massive gripe I have with these cameo bots is how a few franchises were allowed to allegedly have more characters, but they sure don't look like it. All of the Oddworld bots look exactly the same, and I think having multiple Helldivers bots in the free DLC is an outright insult. Players were hoping to get tons of new franchises to the mix, only to be shown the exact same Helldivers model 4 times. At least with the Uncharted, God of War, and Horizon bots, they picked characters with noticeable difference. And the Ape Escape apes even each got a prop to tell them apart, so I know this didn't have to be a problem for Helldivers or Oddworld, and yet somehow it was. As for whether Astro Bot is Game of the Year, I do admit that's still possible, as this was not that great of a year for games. I didn't play Crow Country but assume I would have loved that far more, and the only 2024 game I have played that I liked more was the Apollo Justice re-release, and that probably doesn't count at the end of it. As for the claims Astro Bot is one of the all-time best 3D platformers, I'm sorry but I would never pick this game over any of the original Spyro the Dragon trilogy, Banjo-Kazooie, or even Banjo Nuts and Bolts or Monsters Inc. for the PlayStation 1. Astro Bot is fine. I enjoyed it well enough, but I feel I wouldn't have missed much if I had skipped it. My opinion may slightly change if a Digimon bot appears in an update, but even then, don't quote me on that until it happens.